I made custom touch bar functions to supercharge my MacBook Pro. Here are 7 quick shortcuts that I use every day. I have like 5 Google accounts. I noticed that just by typing in drive.google.com, gmail.com, or basically any Google service that I use on the daily, the account is probably not the right one. And then I had to click on my icon and switch my account. It's not a big deal, but why not just get to the right account the first time? So I made a touch bar function for that. I first touch the icon for the Google service that I want, then I select the account. For Google Calendar, I keep all my events with my nd.edu email, so I usually click on that one. So how does this work exactly? Well, I noticed that there's a number associated with the login in the URL, so I'm copying that URL and making a button so that it will launch the URL when I press it. Okay, this might not seem that big of a deal, but I find it very tedious to write down the date and time. So I use this button to not only look at the time at a glance, but pressing this button will allow me to instantly write down the current date and time. This is super cool for timekeeping and clocking in and out if you're tracking your hours on a spreadsheet. A few weeks ago, I was doing a hackathon with Emmanuel and a couple of other friends, and this one blew Emmanuel's mind. When we were editing the code, he saw me copy 2 separate things of text and was like, wait, you can copy and paste 2 pieces of text at once? And I was like, you can copy and paste as many things as you want. I then promptly showed him this never-ending bar of copy-pasted items. By clicking on each icon, there are lots of ways to paste what you just copied. The 3 basic ones that I use is plain text with format, which is pretty much the same as hitting Command V, and type, which will actually type out letter by letter for you, which could be useful for some reason when pasting traditionally doesn't work. This function alone is exactly why Emmanuel is getting a MacBook Pro with a touch bar. If you've ever seen an old school MacBook Pro with a CD drive, there used to be a dedicated eject button in the upper right hand corner of the keyboard. Obviously, there's no point in having a button there for a CD drive because who uses CDs? Well, I do use an SD card reader all the time, especially when 3D printing and making these episodes. I find it really annoying to eject a disk by going back to my desktop, right-clicking on the disk, and hitting eject. So I made a button that does all that for me. It does this 5-finger reverse pinch gesture on the trackpad to swipe away all the windows temporarily. Then, it moves the mouse pointer to this very specific spot, clicks on whatever is there, and sends Command E to the keyboard, and it ejects the disk after a few seconds. Then, if everything goes as I expected, I can eject the disk safely. I have absolutely fallen in love with the Star Wars prequels again, especially for its meme value. And I want to be able to send memes instantly without going to Reddit, screen capping a meme, and then sending it every single time I feel the need to reference the Star Wars prequels. So here are all the Star Wars prequel memes I could ever need. I don't know about you, but I find it kind of annoying to invite people to my personal Zoom room, especially when we have an impromptu meeting. In case you're not aware, you have a personal Zoom room that you can invite people to anytime you want. The link doesn't expire or anything like that. For some reason, I can't ever find that link when I'm looking for it in Zoom, so I made a button that will paste all the meeting details for me. This might be a niche Premiere thing to complain about, but by default, it just doesn't seem the touch bar is at all optimized. From Adobe's perspective, by default anyway, it seems that the most important thing that the touch bar needs to do for video creators is to ripple trim, going to the next marker, setting markers, going to the previous marker, ripple trim again, and taking screenshots. Those are definitely not the most important features for me because I don't even know what ripple trim is. And I don't need to take screenshots that frequently to the point that I need a dedicated button for it. So I made my own shortcuts. First off, I deal with audio, video, and music. Being able to balance audio levels is super important, and I'm usually adjusting my music volume by plus or minus 10 decibels each time, which means that my left and right bracket keys are getting hammered when I'm putting together an edit. I'm going to give those keys a break and make a touch bar button that hits those keys 10 times for me. I'm also able to do something called touch bar gestures, which means that with 2 or however many fingers I specify, I can drag my fingers along the touch bar and scrub the timeline however fast and slow I want. Those are my 7 touch bar functions that I use every day, although there are a lot more that come in handy from time to time. I think that the touch bar is one of the most underutilized hardware features of any Apple product because regular users like you and me aren't really given any tools from Apple to make the touch bar our own and have it work the way that we want it to. Better Touch Tool is life-changing for me. I do not say that lightly. There are very few things that are life-changing like my boosted board. I don't know what a distant future without the touch bar would even look like. I wrote 0 lines of code to get my MacBook to do all of these functions. Paying attention to myself is how I made all these functions. I just paid attention to the buttons that I press on my keyboard and or where I'm clicking on my screen, and I literally just record those actions, test it, and after 5 minutes or so, I have a button, a specialized button, that will save me so much time in the long run. This is a great time to mention that I am absolutely not sponsored, but that said, it is free for 45 days. So if you have a MacBook Pro with a touch bar, download it if you're curious about giving your Mac superpowers. I'm David the Futurist, and be sure to share with me what shortcuts would change the way you work and play. And I'll see you in the future.